I will now formally appoint and dispatch a group of members to escort the mayor into the chambers. The members of the escort committee are Councilwoman Clark, Councilman Costello, Councilman Pinkett, and Councilwoman Sneed. Will the escort committee please greet the mayor and accompany her to the chambers? I ask the members of the audience to please remain seated and hold your applause until the chief clerk has introduced the mayor.
Mr. President, the Mayor of the City of Baltimore.
I guess everybody can be seated, right?
You may be seated.
I was waiting for Mr. President to do that. Mr. President, Comptroller, I see our state's attorney and others and our state members and members of this esteemed body. And thank you for the honor to share with you the state of our city, a city on the rise. Mr. President, let me begin by thanking you for your partnership in efforts to move Baltimore forward, and to the members of the City Council who have worked on behalf of all of our citizens. Let me also, y'all can get a round of applause for that. Let me also say thank you to my leadership team, my Chief of Staff, Kim Morton, Chief Operating Officer, Pete Hammond, Chief of Strategic Alliances, Jim Smith, City Solicitor, Andre Davis, and Chief of Government Relations, Karen Stokes. I also see Kiefer in here. Hey, Kiefer. He helps us at the state level. Let me begin my address by reminding all of us of the truly great city we claim as home. Despite too much national attention for all the wrong reasons, we know that our city, known for its irresistible charm, is so much more. We rightly boast of the finest medical systems in the world. Ours is a college town with truly great institutions of higher learning, where students from nearly every nation on this earth come to learn and mature, and where groundbreaking research is conducted and prized. Areas of our city that might have elicited a smirk just a few years ago are now thriving with new businesses, new restaurants, and new residents. Average unemployment continues to hover at 5.8%, substantially less than cities to our north and south. We enjoy real estate market values that is the envy of Washingtonians 40 miles from our inner harbor, who pay so much more for so much less. Our major league teams, internationally renowned symphony orchestra, celebrated museums, and acclaimed performance theaters draw tens of thousands of tourists and residents from neighboring counties, filling our restaurants and hotels and contributing to our economic growth. This is our Baltimore. The city that we know and love. A city with problems, for sure, but also a city with immense promise and unmitigated determination and spirit. Yes, ours is also a city with too much tragedy, too much crime, too much devastation, sadness, and loss. Each and every one of those 343 lives lost due to gun violence in 2017 left behind too many loved ones, and the collateral damage done is generational. Too many wounds that will not heal anytime soon. I mourn, as all of us do. This need not be, and it must not continue, and it will not. And then There is that truly awful trial which exposed the very worst of those who betrayed the public trust. The evidence made clear that certain members of our police department were themselves criminals. The victimization of our community by those former officers and the others also implicated, disgraced this police department and disgraced our city. They will now suffer the justice they deserve, and the Gun Trace Task Force Unit, its renegade culture, and the sort of testimony that shocked us every day and will long remind us of one of the most egregious moments in our city's history. And it is a history I vow under my watch never to repeat. And we will root out bad police, and we will reform this department, and the Baltimore Police Department will become one of the most exemplary departments in this country. The 163-page report of the Justice Department that followed the turmoil of Freddie Gray's death provided a pathway of reform to our police department. The consent decree that we formulated in just 60 days outlined the non-negotiables that will create a new culture and new approaches essential to restoring the confidence and trust of the very people our officers are sworn to protect and serve. And the required monitoring team for the consent decree is in place and at work. It includes the community engagement and community oversight teams. At the same time, we are training our police officers and equipping them with the necessary tools to do constitutional policing in a way that respects the rights of every citizen. Not only must we reform our police department through proper training and a significant cultural realignment, but we must provide the essential resources, new technology, and methods to fight crime in an effective and substantial manner. And there must be an inclination to first de-escalate violence and hold those who commit crimes in our community accountable through proper arrests and retention methods that respect the rights of all individuals. Last year, I shared with you our violence reduction plan, and I said our police department needed more technology. I reminded you that in 1997, computers were put in police cars in Montgomery County and Prince George's County, and surrounding counties followed, but not here. So I want to thank the governor who responded to my request and provided $2 million in grants that will incorporate computers in every police car in Baltimore City. We anticipate that completion will be done by the end of this month, no later than early April. And in updating our request from the state on July the 10th, I asked the governor to have the 200+ parole and probation officers assigned to our city to work in concert with our police department, and to restore the parole and probation officers in all 9 of our police districts. And I further requested of the governor that he permit all, and I mean all, state police agencies to work cooperatively with our police department, thereby enabling our police force to focus on neighborhoods. This request was honored, and I am grateful. And then I asked the governor for additional funds to tear down and rehab more boarded-up houses in our city, in addition to the $75 million which he provided through Project CORE and our state delegates and senators fought for. And these boarded-up structures provide a haven for criminals, a hideaway for illegal activity of every kind. This must not continue. And we're awaiting the results of the state budget process. But I can tell you, Kiefer, we are confident that we are being heard. I want to take this moment to thank Bloomberg Philanthropies for honoring my request for $5 million, which was received to provide the latest crime-fighting technology tools, including 100 more CCTV cameras, license plate readers, and a gunshot detection system. And I want to thank all of our federal partners, the ATF, the FBI, Homeland Security, our U.S. Marshals, and others who have partnered with us to reduce violence in our city. We've been asked by the community, in light of the intensity of our crime fight, to restore the Sky video surveillance that was being tested by our police department without informing the community in 2016. Now, we believe that this could be a useful tool today. I've responded to the communities and have said that they must make sure that the community wants this, and let us examine the proper usage, and we will further assess the use of this added capability and continue our dialogue with the community should we, and I emphasize should we, decide to implement this program. Reducing violence in our city requires more than proper policing. 1 year ago, I issued a call to action to our community to help me make Baltimore safe. And February the 2nd, 2017 was our first call to action meeting right here at City Hall, where I invited some 30 individuals and 90 showed up. And they continue to meet today. And we have since conducted listening tours and resource fairs. And many of these groups remain at the table and come to City Hall twice a month to share their suggestions on how to reduce violence in our city. I can't call out all of their names, but if you're here, I ask you to stand so that I can properly thank you. Mr. Clayton and his crew, of 40 children in East Baltimore who have joined with Be More Beautiful to clean up vacant lots and alleys. Baltimore Brothers patrol neighborhoods throughout the city while providing public safety. Erica Bridgeford and Ceasefire, who call on our communities to lay down their guns and respect life. Umar Boxing, No Hooks Before Books, No Boundaries Coalition. Ray Kelly, who participates in our one-day pay for one-day works initiative, helping to identify and work with individuals to move them from the drug trade and unemployment to job training, apprenticeships, and jobs. Community mediation, Hugs Don't Shoot, CFUF, Keys Development, Living Classroom, and just so many, many more. Give them a round of applause. I want to personally thank Rachel Monroe of the Weinberg Foundation, who provided $525,000 in grants to help these groups grow and continue their effort. So again, Rachel, I just want to say thank you. We look forward to soon launching the nationally recognized ROCA program that will hire locally and be managed locally to focus on 17 to 24-year-olds at risk of going in the wrong direction that leads only to a dead end. This, we believe, will further support our focus on disrupting the prospects of violence in our neighborhoods and among those most vulnerable. We expect this program will be up and running by July 1st. I want to thank business and philanthropic community and foundations for making this program possible. It wouldn't happen without them. Safe Streets, a nationally recognized program that utilizes the Cure Violence model to reduce violence, is an evidence-based model for the country. We are expanding Safe Streets from 4 to 10 sites, throughout the city to strengthen the program's impact on reducing gun violence. 3 of the 4 existing programs have achieved more than 365 days without a fatal shooting. And the McElderly Park site recently celebrated more than 500 days with the same distinction. We are one of 32 cities around the world that participate in a Bloomberg Harvard initiative to encourage mayors to think out of the box As a Bloomberg city, we are provided with the latest information, best practices, and unique tools to help us achieve our goals. So last October, I discussed with the Bloomberg Harbor team an idea I had to require putting agencies and commanders from the most violent areas of our city in the same room together to see how this might help us to reduce violence. I wondered if this collaboration, if we tried it, what would happen? So this initiative actually began on November the 1st, 2017. A requirement of my department heads was that they send me only individuals who were empowered to act. We heard from commanders that it typically took as much as 7 to 14 days to respond to their requests. Lights out, alleys unpassable, abandoned cars, vacant houses, code violations in businesses, liquor establishments with faulty licenses. So the Bloomberg Harbor team came to view this initiative a few months ago and has suggested that it become a case study because they know of no other city that has taken this holistic approach, and our agency's responses have gone from 7 to 14 days to 1.5 to 2 days. And since last November, we have also seen a significant reduction in violence in every category. This is not a boast, but merely an acknowledgement that this broad-based, innovative approach to addressing the root causes of violence works. Nearly every day, I attend those meetings that begin at 8 a.m. at police headquarters and are followed up with a 4 p.m. daily check-in. And it was in that room on the 7th floor of the police department headquarters that I began to observe the workings and interactions of the command staff. And then, Deputy Commander Darryl D'Souza was among those critical thinkers participating in this effort, bringing new ideas and suggesting new approaches. And in this setting, now, Commissioner Darryl D'Souza advocated for a new strategic initiative to bring a concentrated focus on the most troubled areas of our city. This, too, proved effective and has contributed to the positive momentum of violence reduction that we are currently experiencing. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. President, Comptroller, Council members, State's Attorney, Commissioner D'Souza, I believe, is the right person at the right time to lead our police department. I have full confidence that he will restore the faith of our community in the work of this department, in the work of the men and women who come to their positions for the most part with tremendous dedication and an intense desire to do good and to protect and serve our citizens. The Commissioner, along with our violence reduction team, recently reported to the City Council the progress of our collaborative efforts that have resulted in the downward trend of violence citywide. He further updated this council on the results of his collaboration with his command staff that led to defining the 7-pillar strategy that will guide them in leading, reform, and reducing violence. Already, his leadership is producing results, and I believe his approach and great personal as well as leadership qualities will continue to bode well for our city. But allow me to add this. No single entity, however, can take credit for the clear progress we are achieving in reducing violence and enabling us to address the systemic neglect in our neighborhoods. Every group and organization, our city agencies, including Recreation and Parks, which is keeping open our rec centers in our most vulnerable areas to 11 p.m. on Friday nights until midnight on Saturdays, with programs to keep our children engaged. Thank you, Reggie Moore. But you also need to know that we're not satisfied, and we will not rest in our efforts to reduce violence and work to mitigate its lasting effects. So I want to thank Kim Owens, who took to Facebook to scream to all of us that she could not bear alone the killing of her child in 2015 by gun violence. She begged us to stop the genocide. But underneath her scream was the call for help. So I reached out to Kim, who joined us one Monday for a city council luncheon and a conversation with me that led to a conversation with Dr. Perman of the University of Maryland, to provide her with the emotional and medical assistance she needs to help her move forward with her life. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Dr. Perman. They both join us this evening. Kim's anguish confronts us with an important question. And if we can take off weeks and even months after the birth of a child, what do we need to do in terms of time and support to return those left behind to some sense of normalcy after the killing of a child or a loved one by gun violence in our streets? I've asked Dr. Perman to help lead and elevate that discussion so that we may find meaningful solutions to help us address and heal the pain that exists in so many among us who have suffered without enough support to mentally or physically move beyond their tragedy. The other question we must ask ourselves is, what counseling and psychological attention must we pay to our children in our city who have watched, heard, witnessed, or been impacted by too much violence in our streets? That is a conversation I'm having with our school CEO, Dr. Sandelises. We must be aware of the psychological damage it has and its potential to undermine the victim's ability to become whole, productive members of our community. And meaningful, sustainable crime reduction requires sophisticated tools and approaches, and we are constantly in search of the latest and the best ways to reduce violence. Thus, our violence reduction plan is always evolving. Soon, we will add additional tools, including the Strategic Decision Support Centers, beginning in the Eastern and Western districts, which combines technology, data, and intelligence to deploy officers to hotspots in real time. This approach is smart policing for the 21st century and will result in safer communities and fewer victims. This model was adopted from Los Angeles. The Department of Justice is supporting this effort. The very same approach that was successful in reducing violence also in Chicago. Though I ask you to take note of our progress, I do not ask you to be satisfied, because I am not. There is no more important element in our strategy and effort than restoring the respect and confidence of our community in our police officers, and creating a culture within the department that has integrity, respect, and accountability as non-negotiable requirements of any man or woman who wears the badge. As we know, respect is something earned each and every day, and the easiest way to earn it is to give it. And so I ask the Fraternal Order of Police tonight to help restore that trust and confidence by allowing 2 appointed Baltimore citizens to sit on the police trial boards. Let us settle this without legislative action. All of us want the same thing: a safe city and a police department we can all be proud of. Let me now turn to another one of my most important strategic priorities: the quality of life in our city. This is what determines the viability, livability, and growth of any city. Urging, promoting, and creating a new era of investment in our neighborhoods and communities is a top priority of this administration. The 2 fastest growing populations in Baltimore continue to be 18 to 34 years of age and 55 years of age and older. Growing the 35 to 54-year age group is our city's challenge. By this age group, cities are judged by crime levels and the quality of school choices. So you all should remember that in 1997, and some may be too young to remember, Mary Pat, you were around. Most of you know that as a condition of receiving $500 million in additional funding, the mayor at that time was instructed that the only way he could receive that money was to turn control of our school system over to the state. The importance of this shift in city government is that unlike every other jurisdiction in the state, our formula-funded school system dollars and capital dollars go directly to the school system and not through the city. So the city adds almost another $500 million to the operations of the school and gives the system a nearly $2 billion operating budget for over 80,000 students. To put that in perspective, this nearly $2 billion budget juxtaposed against the nearly $3 billion that the city allocates to operate the entire city, including police, fire, towing, trash pickup, paving, employment development training, health initiatives, homeless services, recreation and parks, and after-school programs for our children, as well as programs for the aging, community markets, bike paths, and many more for our 620,000 residents. But I want to thank Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh, our chairwoman for the Appropriations Committee, and Senator McFadden, Ferguson, and Joan Carter Conway, who led and lead the fight for a just funding of our school system and our college system. Our entire delegation is committed to fighting for not just fair funding of our school system, but just funding. Thank you for all the work you do on behalf of the citizens of our city. This year, we will add another $2 million to the school's capital budget, bringing our contribution to $19 million. I remind you that as a state senator, we brought back to this city $1 billion to build 23 new schools in Baltimore. We have since opened 2 new schools this year, Fort Washington Elementary and Middle School and Frederick Elementary School. And we will open 2 new 21st century school buildings next month. We are well on our way to improving the facilities for our young people, but new buildings alone will not solve the myriad of problems facing our schools. And while we don't operate the schools or the buildings, I could not stand on the sideline and watch our school system struggle to regain its footing when nearly 80 schools went offline during one of the most worst winter freezes we've ever experienced in some time. I could not stand by and point fingers as to who or whom was in control. I contacted Dr. Sandelises and said, whatever you need, we are there for you and for our students. We went steps further. I sent my team from our offices, General Services, led by Steve Sharkey, Mr. Chow of the Public Works Department, and then I begged the private sector to join us in getting those schools reopened. Thank you, Calvin Butler, and the rest of those out there in the public sector. By the time the weekend was over, working collaboratively with the partners I had assembled along with the school system, we were able to get all but 8 schools back in service before that Monday, and all but 1 back in service before the following weekend. And through this collaboration with Dr. Sandelises, we developed another policy. We will not wait for schools to be out 3 days before we provide food for our children. The new policy is that when our schools close, the city will open recreation centers and provide activities and food for our children. Let us never forget that we have homeless children in our school system. and those who are not properly nourished but depend on us to provide that all-important daily meal. And building new schools and repairing those we can is important, but closing old schools that are antiquated, outdated, and unfit for learning is necessary, as evident by the experience we just endured. We must be strategic. Communities deserve to know if a school building is closing permanently, what plans do we have for that structure so that we do not leave an empty building unpurposed in their neighborhoods. Working with our planning, housing, and economic development partners in both the public and private sectors, we will provide those plans and see those buildings as opportunities to help shape and stabilize neighborhoods, and rebuilding neighborhoods is the cornerstone of this administration. Boarded up buildings are an eyesore and harbor criminal activity, and they further the destruction of a neighborhood. Our citizens deserve better, and we will do better by them. I asked our housing commissioner to create a workforce training team to repair houses before they fall into disrepair. Michael Braverman, I'm looking forward to meeting that team. They can be ex-offenders or skilled people with a desire to work, because blight demoralizes communities. I've asked my housing department to tear down as many dilapidated properties as quickly as we can, and we're on schedule to tear down just over 1,000 before the end of this year. While it represents aggressive work on the part of our housing department, this is not enough. All 14,000 boarded houses don't need to be torn down, and some can be rehabbed. And we are creating an investment fund to allow us to incentivize the development and occupancy of those structures, because we can save some. Park Heights, for example, is a community ripe for this kind of initiative. And our impressionable corridors, whether Broadway north to south, North Avenue east to west, Monroe, Fulton, Biddle, Chase, Martin Luther King, Greenmount, or the many other neighborhoods that have gone neglected or seen little or no investment. Our goal is to create safe, walkable, and livable communities. In researching the comeback of urban cities like Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Detroit, they all included the support and investment by their business communities. The city needs the business community to help us develop a $1 billion investment fund over the next 5 years and join us in tearing down and rehabbing neighborhoods that have endured neglect and underinvestment for decades. We can change Baltimore and create neighborhoods that everyone would want to live and work in. And no one knows better than this council that our city does not operate only 9 to 5, and neither should city government. The needs of our communities go beyond those golden hours, so we must be available to meet them. I'm restructuring city government to meet those needs, and we're making progress in adding neighborhood workers that are able to deal with the community's problems 24/7, and in outreach workers and agencies to deal with issues before they erupt. We know that this approach works, and our agencies must move from being reactive to proactive. This is responsive and accountable government. Last year, we launched this approach with our call to action group, mostly volunteers. After a 3-hour training with our mediation group, I walked with them, knocked on doors. We talked with Baltimoreans about the needs of their community, and I returned with them a few weeks later with the services they requested. You will see other agencies do like our police and fire, move outside of agency walls to the streets, not just to respond to emergencies, but to the needs of our city 24 hours. The Office of Employment Development, for example, now joins the fire department on daily walks through neighborhoods, making sure our residents have smoke detectors. OED asks if anyone they encounter are looking for jobs, and then provide them with information. They will now be equipped with iPads to help residents immediately fill out applications for jobs that we have available. And the services requested thus far from the neighborhood listening tours have ranged from expanded recreation programs, drug treatment services, criminal record expungement, to jobs where we bring out our library city's mobile jobs unit to them where they live and with the essential resources they need. So let me just take this moment to announce that by mid-April, through the generous donation of an anonymous donor who simply asked only to be identified as sponsored by Baltimore people who believe in Baltimore's future, we will have our second mobile jobs unit on the streets of Baltimore equipped to handle job applications and employment on the spot. I invite you to join me and Commissioner D'Souza and our violence reduction team. Where's our violence reduction team? I hope they're in here. I just want to give a round of applause to their efforts, to the violence reduction team. Join us as we close off Pennsylvania and Lawrence and bring essential services to a community of folks who are in dire need of help. We know by virtue of our own experience that this approach matters and makes a difference to those in those neighborhoods. And responsive government can actually lift and empower citizens. I am fortunate to have so many working alongside of me who are tireless in their devotion to their work, which they see, I hope, not as a job, but as a vocation. They are helping me to address the needs of our citizens in a way I believe will change the trajectory of those most in need and most vulnerable to falling between the cracks. The high unemployment rate of African American men in Baltimore City is unacceptable. Whether you have a PhD or no degree or a returning citizen or a longtime resident, we must do better. And I'm remembering a conversation I had with Mayor Mitch Landrieu, who is about to end his term as mayor of New Orleans. I didn't ask him what his greatest accomplishment was. I asked him to tell me what was the biggest problem in New Orleans he did not conquer. And his reply was the myriad of problems facing black males in particular: high unemployment, drug addiction, engagement in criminal activity. It led me to research and find out what is being done in this country to deal with that problem, a problem that similarly grips our city. And in Baltimore, while we have reduced unemployment to its lowest rate in a decade, blacks are 80% of the unemployed in our city, with African American males being the majority of that number. These findings and the comments of Mayor Landrieu led me to establish the Office of African American Male Engagement that is being led by Dr. Andrew Bunley. Dr. Bunley is charged with coordinating all initiatives to increase employment, business opportunities, and wraparound services for African American males, including the many men returning from prison to our city, and to help them become stable and productive members of our community. Dr. Bunley won't be able to do this work by himself, so I'm calling on business leaders, employers, faith-based and nonprofit, philanthropic groups to help us face and fix this problem. And Dr. Bunley, Andrew Knox, we wish you and your team great success in what you call your mission and not a job. Thank you for taking this on. Make Baltimore an example that our nation needs to follow. I'm so excited to report to you that our Recreation and Parks Department, under the leadership of Reggie Moore, has launched some very exciting programs for our young people. The Drone Camp caters to STEAM development launched last month in 10 of our 42 recreation centers and will be expanded as interest continues to grow. Over $1 million is being spent to renovate our indoor and outdoor pools and upgrade them to ADA compliant. We're also improving recreation centers and replacing roofs while refinishing floors and improving courts and fields. We're so grateful to the nearly 14,000 individuals who volunteer to support the numerous programs: canoeing, fishing, biking, senior splash, summer leagues, day and night, all of that to therapeutic recreation. Through recreation and parks, including Rhythm and Reels, we have involved over 100,000 participants. We are working to create a competitive environment for all of our children, whether they dance, sing, spell, do science or athletics, where they can learn to be with each other without hurting one another. Mr. President, Comptroller, City Council members, late last year I closed Shake and Bake Family Fun Center. I closed it because the roof was in disrepair, about to collapse. The air conditioning and heating were not dependable. The concession stands were unacceptable. And you were hard-pressed to find matching skates, and the roller rink floor was buckling, and 70% of the bowling lanes were inoperable. I know that decision to close this facility angered many. But for me and many in our community, mediocrity, and councilman, is not acceptable. All of our communities deserve quality recreation, said Councilman Costello. And entertainment venues in the Pennsylvania Avenue corridor is no exception. We will reopen the iconic Shake and Bake Family Fun Center. As you know, it was first visualized and established by the great Colt player Glenn Dowdy. Some of y'all don't remember that. We have just about completed the roof, installed heating and air conditioning system, purchased 500 new pairs of matching skates, and added quality concessions. We will open the skating rink and we will continue to work on the bowling alley. So join us for the opening on March 23rd. We are very excited. Mr. President, council members, comptroller, we have received over 100 applications, Madam Vice President, for each of 2 revived initiatives, the Women's Commission, thank you, Madam Vice President, and the LGBTQ Commission. We look forward to their work, which is about promoting inclusion and defeating disparities wherever it exists. Baltimore is a great city because it is a city of diverse neighborhoods, ethnic heritage, and one that celebrates people of every walk of life. We need to amplify the concerns of those whom society has not always embraced, as well as the tremendous power and impact of women in every aspect of our civic life. Our Office of Immigration, under the direction of Catalina Rodriguez Lima, is working hard on behalf of the immigrant community and pursuing initiatives that will leave no doubt that Baltimore is a welcoming city. We will continue to support the expansion of educational, jobs, and business opportunities for our immigrant communities and working very diligently with our Latino community. In this last year, our agencies have accomplished a great deal, much more than I am able to capture in one address. But I would like for all of our agency heads to stand up. Sit down. That's so that I could at least say thank you for working with me in my unconventional approach to changing city government so that it meets the needs of our community. And I know some of you dread those late night and weekend texts, somebody say texts, that requires thoughtful responses, often on the spur of the moment, Braverman. He likes them though. I will be working with Jason Perkins Cohen of the Office of Employment Development to secure summer jobs for the over 16,000 young people who've applied to work in our Youth Work Summer Jobs program. This is up considerably from the 12,000 who applied last year. And just to give you a feel for what that means, 12,000 applied last year, 9,000 followed through, 16,000 have already applied this year. And I can tell you when we opened up the portal in 24 hours, 2,000 had already signed up. We believe that this is due to the business community and our own agencies providing our young people with meaningful job experiences. I ask each of you, to hire at least one youth at $1,600 to work in your offices, businesses, or organizations this summer. Mr. President, just reminding you, and our Comptroller, Madam Comptroller, and Madam State's Attorney, you all do it best. You both supported last year this program. I look forward to your support again this year. Thank you for last year. We had junior state's attorneys in here. Through Jason's efforts, we will also work with our school system to host the first ever jobs fair on May the 9th for our graduating seniors. Thank you, Madam CEO. Please, I ask of our employers and agency heads, fill some of those positions that you have available with our own youth and help inspire their imagination and interest for their future careers. We've made Baltimore City Community College free, and we are geared up to help them transition into our community college. We also are seeking to track every youth that graduates from our schools this year. We want to know where they are going, whether to work, college, or to the armed forces. And if they are not employed, we will work with them to help determine their next steps, whether it is a training or an internship program. And we must know where all of our children are, because I can tell you that hanging on the corners of our streets is not an option. We don't want it, we will not have it. That is not their future. Their future is with us, leading them to better opportunities. The Health Department, under Dr. Leanna Wen, has become one of the most innovative health departments in this country. Tackling drug addiction and offering new policy and initiatives that bring us closer to solutions while training more people to prevent overdoses. The addition of a stabilization center, Councilman, will only add to better treatment for this vulnerable population. Our eyeglass program for our children, in cooperation with Johns Hopkins, has helped to move our children from those in need to model students. And our Be More Healthy Babies, Councilwoman, program is helping mothers raise more healthy children. And last year I announced my intention, you all remember this, to separate the Housing Authority of Baltimore City and Housing and Community Development in order to create a more focused federal housing program and a much needed housing and community development program. It is done. Under the leadership of Commissioner Michael Braverman, the Housing and Community Development Department has seen 75% of all permits now being processed online. And with the use of technology, the inspection process is much improved and faster. We are looking forward to a new artist housing development project being proposed by HCD through its work with the Artist Task Force Councilman in West Baltimore. The $3.5 million grant matched by the Weinberg Foundation will enable over 500 aging adults to receive housing repairs. Our housing department, through its many initiatives, are touching thousands of people in our city, whether it is adding solar to underserved communities, sustaining our summer food program, or supporting the Baltimore Energy Challenge. They are changing lives. And the main focus of this agency is to lead housing development and rehabilitate neglected neighborhoods. I want to thank the Department of Human Resources, the Office of Employment Development, the Housing Authority of Baltimore, and Social Services, whose collective effort resulted in almost 10,000 Baltimoreans receiving employment. And Janet Abrams, Executive Director for HABC, for her intense focus on transforming public housing, including Gilmore Homes. The Perkins Project is being developed under the Choice Neighborhoods Initiative and could see some more than $30 million in funding. And making sure that government is responsive and transparent and accountable, I have made, working with my executive team, mandating a new focus on agencies for this very purpose. We must be responsive, we must be transparent, and we must be accountable. The Mayor's Office of Sustainable Solutions is being directed by Kendra Pollack, a data scientist who focuses on performance measures to facilitate accountability and business processes so that we can measure outcomes. And let me remind you that she is responsible for establishing the tools and providing the information that determines when an agency is not in compliance with the goals they set or the mayor sets. She does not set the goals. She measures and provides the transparency by which they all are governed. That is for every agency. I'm pleased to announce that for the first time in the history of Baltimore, we have launched under Frank Johnson our Inclusive Digital Transformation Strategic Plan, which will serve as a roadmap in designing a technology ecosystem that reduces redundancy and costs while improving the public experience with city government, and while also bringing Baltimore up to the 21st century standards. The Mayor's Office of Innovation, led by Dan Himowitz, with the use of technology, has helped improve the efficiency of the BPD's hiring process. While maintaining high standards, the I-Team, as I call them, is now working with the BPD to build a high school cadet and apprentice program, while building on the recruitment success of 2017. This will be the first time since 2009 that the Baltimore Police Department's hiring outpaced its attrition. They'll develop an extensive collaboration with community groups, local schools, and colleges so we can hire even more greater candidates from Baltimore City who will shape our future of our police department. And the I-Team's next focus will be building better outcomes for homelessness. The Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice, led by Drew Vetter, is coordinating all criminal justice activities and supporting initiatives in our police department while hiring a human trafficking coordinator. Thank you, Councilman Burnett, for your work on that, for your efforts with this initiative. Where is he? Thank you, Councilman. The work of our small Minority and Women Business Office continues to expand as we streamline our certification process to mirror surrounding jurisdictions and the state to provide easier access to city contracts, permits, and licensing. Our aim is simple: to create a more inclusionary process by giving more opportunity for those who live in our city to compete. In our effort to improve not only the way Baltimore looks, but how it works for our citizens, the Department of Transportation under Michelle Pouchot is reconstructing over 180,000 sidewalks, installing 14 bike lanes, locations for a total of approximately 20 miles of bike lanes. DOT has also converted 23,000 lights to LED lights. This summer, they will install 2,400 new lights, with the completion of 6,000 by the end of 2019 to create a more walkable and welcoming city. Thank you, BG&E, Calvin, also for your help. Our efforts to provide food, whether through our after-school programs, senior healthy food programs, or filling the needs of the underserved communities, is already an example that other cities should be following. Thank you, Holly Frischstadt. Be More Beautiful and its outreach program, led by Rebecca Woods, is engaging our citizens and young people across this city in cleaning lots and alleys while putting many to work. I understand there were about 50 of them up in Park Heights this week. Young people who all earn, you all should know this, $10 an hour for 4 hours of work. We're engaging our young people year-round. I want to thank Rudy Chow for all that you are doing to innovate our water department. Your initiative has increased opportunities for African Americans and other minorities to do business with our city, which is under a federal mandate to fix our infrastructure that will create billions of dollars in contract work. But thank you for upgrading our meters to allow every citizen to moderate their own water usage. And I want to just be real clear here. No citizen in Baltimore will lose their home over a delinquent water bill. But you must not sit back and wait for the problem to exacerbate. We are poised to help you, but we can't help you if we don't know you have a problem. Help us help you. The 65 individuals who camped in front of City Hall and the 40 individuals who camped on Guilford to demonstrate how chronic homelessness is in our city, we reached out to them, conversed with them, surveyed, and offered them assistance in identifying different options. I want to thank you, Terry Hickey and staff, for your approach and leadership. And most of those homeless individuals indeed wanted housing. Some, especially mothers with children, were able to receive quickly wraparound services and housing that included Section 8 vouchers. Thank you, Janet Abrams. And yes, some are living in dormitory-style quarters where they receive meals, transportation, training, medical attention, and work without being forced into shelters that require curfews. We are working with Helping Up Mission and our own housing department to provide additional housing. This year, they will break ground for 300 new housing accommodations for the homeless. In Baltimore, we spend at least $200 million in subsidies for affordable housing, and without question, there is much more work ahead and more investment to be made. We must have an unqualified commitment to make the city more inclusive and more diverse, and not infringe on anyone's civil rights. We thank Jill Carter, who leads our Office of Civil Rights. And the year recently concluded was certainly a challenging one, but one of clear progress. The removal of the Confederate statues was an act motivated by the need to remove from our most prominent public spaces images that enshrined attitudes and policies that were degrading for the majority of our citizens. Like many of cities around this nation and communities across the state, drugs and the epidemic of opioid addiction is devastating families, and most especially our young people. And although we are doing much, we must do more. I encountered a young man one morning who I instructed to go to school, and he was on the corner at 10 a.m. squeegeeing. I later encountered that same young man at 9:30 p.m. Concerned, I visited him the next day at school. I asked him, how could I help him? He, a 14-year-old, said, not I want a job, I need a job. I encountered him one or two more occasions on the street with his mother begging for whatever he could get within that same week. I did get him a job in one of our year-round programs for youth who want to work. I later learned that his mother was actually homeless and an addict. In an effort to help them, we harnessed city services, provided them with housing, and in connecting them with social services, learned there were many more problems than we were not aware of. So I want to thank Reggie Scriber and Kwame. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. What I can tell you is that he is now in foster care with a wonderful family, a mother, a father, and a foster brother. But so are at least 3 of his other family members. One since her birth, cocaine addicted, and she's now 7. I share this with you because there are so many others just like him. The impact of what happens in our streets impacts the lives of our children. I ask you to be slow to judge and more eager to help. Changing Baltimore requires work collectively to solve our problems and together lifting those who need a helping hand. We are a great city, but it does require all of our commitments. I want you to know that as much as our city has suffered through this last year, there are some great things happening. Black Enterprise proclaimed Baltimore one of the top cities for African Americans to grow their businesses. The New York Times said that this was a city that you can't not miss. We're one of 15 out of 52 cities around the world to visit. Forbes magazine said that we're among the coolest cities in America. And I can tell you, and you can ask Bill Cole, our technology sector continues to grow. Mr. President, City Council members, Comptroller, Baltimore is a city on the rise, and we will not turn back nor falter in our constant effort to move our city forward. I want to thank everyone, including our unions. Thank you for your partnership and for all that you are doing to support our continued undeterred momentum. There is much more work ahead. There is much more for us to do. I look forward to us continuing to work together. Thank you for this opportunity to share, and God bless.